there's a really pressing need within not just the special operations community, but across all the military services and the whole of government to understand and identify what are the narrative messages that our adversaries are putting out there against us. At a certain level of war, the only important key terrain is the 6 inches of gray matter between the ears of the leadership and the populace of your adversary.
Hello and welcome to the McHale Report Podcast, SOF Week Show Daily edition. My name is John McHale, Group Editorial Director for the SOF Week Show Daily and Military Embedded Systems Magazine. And we are here today with Bill Wall, CEO and co-founder of Accrete AI Government. Today we will cover how AI tech enables a cognitive advantage for special operations. So as we get started, Bill, can you kind of provide a brief description of what your role is in Accrete AI and your experience in the defense industry?
Sure. Thank you, John. So I started Accrete AI Government with 2 other partners about 6.5, 7 years ago as a subsidiary of a commercial artificial intelligence company that was starting in New York City in the financial markets. And our theory at the time, our thesis was that the artificial intelligence, the emerging capabilities 6 or 7 years ago that Accrete was developing to help financial analysts understand fast-moving markets, understand the search to find alpha in the markets, first mover advantage, that we had a thesis that that capability could be ported over and brought to bear for the U.S. government and the U.S. military in particular. And that was based on a couple of things, based one on just a little bit of a commercial history of being involved with innovative technology and seeing what was coming next. And 6 or 7 years ago, AI was just beginning to break the horizon. And then being involved in the military itself, in the special operations community and the Joint Special Operations Command, being involved in applying innovative technology to the mission and seeing 20 years ago, the things, the leaps and bounds that we made in mission capability using innovative technology 20 years ago, and wanting to repeat that cycle and continue to bring more and better technology to enable our special operators and the wider U.S. government in general with artificial intelligence.
And so, as mentioned, we're here as a preview for technology that's going to be showcased at SOF Week, May 18th through 21st. But I always like to ask this question: why is special operations such an important part to you? Why is special operations community so important to Accrete AI Government?
So to me personally, it's important because I served in the community and my friends and peers are still there. And I understand how important the mission is, how important technology can be to increase mission success and survivability of the organizations out there, and to super enable the constant demanding requirements for special operations, which seems to only be growing day by day by day. So personally, I feel a commitment to support the community. For Accrete, we love the special operations community because if anyone is interested in deploying and employing innovative cutting edge technology, it's the special operations community. And they're smart and they're read up. They know what they're talking about. They understand technology. They understand how to employ it. So it's always an exciting conversation. 6 or 7 years ago, when I would talk to other government organizations outside of the Department of Defense, outside of SOCOM, no one really knew what AI was, or no one really knew how they wanted to use it. But we have ongoing, vibrant conversations with the special operations community about artificial intelligence and the cutting edge capabilities that our company can bring, and they're invested in working with us hand in hand. So to us, this is our best conference every year.
It's interesting. I was talking to another gentleman. They make small unmanned aerial vehicles for autonomous vehicles for special operations, Red Cat. And I said, we talked about innovation. How often do you talk with you? He goes, what's great about operators is It's a hell of a lot better. Engineers are great. They design stuff, but the operators tell you what they actually need, and that's where you learn the most from. And you get, and the special operations community is, you get more directly involved with the end user of your product probably than any other branch of the service.
Yeah,
That's what I've heard.
that's true. And then the last thing, of course, about Soft Week, the best thing about it is just renewing those personal ties with everyone that I've served with the children of people that I served with who
Oh,
are now
wow. Yeah.
serving. The community just continues to grow and support each other, and it's a great experience. The Soft Week experience is unparalleled.
Yeah, Stu Braden, we've asked him this last year, and he said, I get to see all my friends. It's great, in addition to everything else. But
Right.
the community is really tight, which is always exciting to see.
Absolutely.
So the big question, how can the U.S. military dominate the information space with AI?
So this is such a pertinent question. And, 3 or 4 years ago, cognitive advantage, information operations, psychological warfare, whatever term you want to use of the day, I prefer cognitive advantage, was kind of a back burner topic for the special operations community. It's always been a direct action, counterterrorism, advisory type command, things that fly, things that shoot, things that blow up. But in the past 4 or 5 years, we're seeing growing requirements and impact of information operations and cognitive advantage. You don't have to look any further than the recent conflict with Iran to see how nations who cannot match us peer to peer in a tactical battle are turning to the asymmetric use of information operations to attack the US strategically. I don't know, John, if you've seen any of the Lego videos that have come out that have been sponsored by the Iranian government or people affiliated with Iran, and they are directly attacking the US government's legitimacy for the war with Iran, the US government's competence in the administration. They are bringing up all sorts of issues to try to take away public and governmental support for the war against Iran or the conflict against Iran. And they know that they can't fight us tactically, militarily, so they are trying to fight us strategically through social media and messaging to diminish the support that we get both internally and externally from our allies and our populace and internal to our own government. It's a strategic level of war that's only going to continue to be used more and more and more.
And it's working in some respects, unfortunately.
In some respects, it's working, and mostly it's working because it's a battlefield that the U.S. has not generally engaged in robustly. And I think we're beginning across the whole of government to realize this is something we have to pay attention to. In the past year, the National Security Council added a position, and there's a member on the National Security Council who owns the portfolio for cognitive advantage. That's never happened before. That was not something that the National Security Council thought about much. When I was in 20 some years ago, information operations was kind of an add-on. We'd plan a tactical operation, and then we'd say to the IO guys, hey, what can you do? Print up some leaflets,
I was just thinking, when you said
yeah,
that, I'm thinking it's a
right,
modern version of dropping leaflets from planes saying, your
right.
government's terrible. Come to the Americans. Yeah.
And so here's what's interesting to me about the whole idea of cognitive advantage. In World War II, when we invaded Normandy, we had to have massive amounts of people coming across the shore. We had paratroopers from the 82nd and the 101st dropping in behind enemy lines because that's what we had to do to get there physically. Now our adversaries can parachute ideas metaphysically into our populace without any regard of being interdicted. Those
You're weaponizing
messages,
social
yeah,
media in a way.
social media, which a majority of Americans get their news and form their opinions from. And so there's a really pressing need within not just the special operations community, but across all the military services and the whole of government to understand and identify what are the narrative messages that our adversaries are putting out there against us. First, let's identify them. That's the first step. If we can identify the narratives that our enemies are putting out there against us, then can we identify counter narratives, right? In that information advantage world to fight that narrative. And then can we measure the effectiveness of those narratives? Are we changing minds? Are we changing how people act? At a certain level of war, the only important key terrain is the 6 inches of gray matter between the ears of the leadership and the populace of your adversary. And so we have to be able to affect that. And there's lots of ways to affect it. You can affect it with action, you can affect it through tactical military operations, but we can't ignore the cognitive realm of social media and information operations. It is growing importance every day. And with the speed of information that goes around the world today, with artificial intelligence, our adversaries are weaponizing it easily. And if we don't do something to identify, counter, and measure, then we're not in that fight at all. And we're going to lose strategic battles. We'll win tactical battles all day long, but we'll lose strategic ones because we'll never win popular support and we'll never get into breaking the will of our enemies.
Okay, so how can you talk about your knowledge engine platform, Bill? I've been looking at it online, and how does that enable the information dominance you kind of just talked about?
Sure. So it's such a great question for people to think about today. In the past couple of years, we've seen the social adoption and use of large language models. People are very familiar with them. People use them as personal assistants. And there's a challenge with large language models. They're only as good as the information that they have access to. And it's kind of been proven that if they don't have the right answer, they'll tell you anything. And people call that hallucination. So a large language model by itself isn't sufficient for our customers. What they really need to do is pull all of their different data out of all of its different silos into one large area and de-silo that data, extract entities out of it, extract relationships, and then put context around that. So then a large language model can be used to query that data. Large language models are built to do search, but they're not built to do analysis. So you need a knowledge engine to enable that analysis. I'll give you an example. Maybe a large language model could find out that you and I are neighbors, and it would connect us, and there's a connection. We live next to each other. But that doesn't contextualize our relationship. Like maybe you hate me because my dogs are always in your yard and my kids jump over the fence or in your pool. Or maybe we're really good friends and we barbecue together on the weekends. Context is what matters here, not just the connection. And so to get value out of the information, it has to be brought together, contextualized, and then made available so that a large language model can then search against it and bring to an analyst the answers that they want. More data points don't help an analyst. Data points that are contextualized help an analyst.
So in large language models, you're talking like ChatGPT, Claude,
Sure.
It's so popular among the consumers. And my colleagues in sales swear by it because it helps them do data analysis, data, push it out there into different things. Journalism,
Right.
but it backs to the search tool. It's only reliable as the information. Can you
That's
verify it?
Right.
And it's interesting you gave that example. So we talk about two companies that are related because we had this discussion once, a colleague and I, and they say the search says they're competitors. Maybe they are because they have the same product, but they actually might be partners on systems. So it's always that's where a business link might come through there. I thought about that.
And even deeper business relationships. So what are their financial positions? Who's invested in them? Is there a common investor? Are there board members in any way related? Are there board members from the two separate companies on the board of a third company, right? So what is the nature of that relationship? And a large language model by itself probably won't find that because that's a deep level of data and understanding that you've got to put together. So yeah, pulling the context out of data is the true value of AI and what helps analysts. And we want to make sure that people don't think we're trying to replace humans. We're trying to super empower humans by helping them with this problem that everyone has of being overwhelmed by too much data that they can't make sense of.
Context is king, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it makes me think about, now, does the knowledge engine provide can it also verify whether what you're getting from the large language module is accurate? I keep thinking back to the Reagan years. Trust it, but verify it, right?
Yeah.
That common phrase with the Russians.
Yeah, so I think that's very important. I mean, I think, um, you know, a, a knowledge graph, if it's providing the right context, tells you the source provenance of where your information comes, what time that observation was made, the confidence level of the accuracy of the data, understanding the relationships in the data, the supporting evidence that's there, and then a human feedback loop that can say, you know what, this isn't what we think it is. There's a mistake here, and that might change over time, right? Data isn't fixed in time. Our understanding of what something means might change over time. So putting that context into the data is really important, and it takes a little bit of subject matter expertise and a human somehow involved in the loop of building the right model and verifying it. In some ways, it's kind of like you know, a thesis. You got to have your footnotes and show where you got your data from. And any product, any AI solution that says to a customer, hey, look, this is a black box. We can't explain how we got to the answer. That's a bad solution, right? Humans have to be able to justify it, whether it's a federal law enforcement agent who has to go in front of a judge and show his cause and evidence, or whether it's an analyst who in the military who has to justify to their boss why they've come up with a certain judgment. I think it's very important that we be able to provide the provenance and the context and the time and a confidence level to all of that information. And that's the challenge with things that are on just the internet. Who knows what's on the internet? Like there's all sorts of bad information out there. Anybody can put anything. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. So having some sense of your data and making sure that your data has gone through a process to really look at it and confirm it to some degree is important.
That's a good example. I could claim on LinkedIn that I'm an expert in just about anything, and a search might pull that up, but that's clearly not accurate, right? So
yeah, exactly.
And it's also, context is very critical for special operations because it could be the difference between life and death on a mission. And so,
absolutely,
yeah. And so, speaking of special operations and the knowledge engine, are there other solutions that you guys are going to showcase and talk to operators and other partners about at SOF Week?
Yeah, so we've got two big things that we look at right now in specific solutions. There's a cognitive advantage. There's a lot of words people use lately in the profession: psychological operations, information operations, cognitive advantage, cognitive warfare. I tend to veer towards cognitive advantage. So the idea is, what are the trending narratives within a specific populace about a specific topic, and do we understand what's the populace's opinion of something is? Once we have that understanding, then do we want to change that opinion? Do we want to combat that opinion? Do we want to support that opinion? And if we do, how would we do that? What are the messages that maybe would resound in a populace? And then how could we measure whether or not we're affecting those messages? There's a really interesting example right now. If you look at the conflict with Iran, where we have overmatched them militarily at the tactical and operational level, huge success, destroyed their military, destroyed all sorts of, the military infrastructure for that country. And how are they fighting back? They're fighting back by posting videos on the internet that are Lego short movies, and they're Lego characters. And there's a soundtrack to it, and it's a very high level of production, and the soundtrack's catchy, usually a rap song or some kind of thing. And what they're attacking is the legitimacy of the US's purpose and reason for having this conflict with Iran. And what they're trying to do is diminish both internal US and external international support for the US's cause, because they can't fight us militarily, so they're going to fight us strategically by trying to degrade the support. And they're doing it in an interesting way. They're doing it through social media, through making these videos. And the videos are very pointed. They bring up all sorts of, relevant social commentary that you and I might hear on Twitter, or we might hear our neighbors talk about, and they're bringing it to the whole world to look at. It's an interesting thing that's going on. So how can we measure, is this effective? Is this degrading the support for the US operations from our allies or internally? And if we wanted to counter any of their messages, how would we do that? And so this is something that's really important to me, having spent a career in special operations. I saw that one of the things that we did not do as well as we could have was fighting this strategic battle of narrative. We did not convince a significant amount of people in Afghanistan not to support the Taliban. We did not convince a significant number of people across the Middle East not to support Salafist jihadists. We fought the Taliban, we fought Salafist jihadists. We didn't lose a battle against them, but we ended up not necessarily winning the wars the way we wanted to, because we lost the battle of public opinion, what I like to call that key terrain, which is the 6 inches of gray matter in between the populace and our enemy's ears. So that's a big thing for us right now. It's a growing field, the information age that we're in, where people get their news from social media, people express their opinions of social media. You can get a good feel for what a particular audience thinks about things on social media. And we think that's a field that the special operations community could play in better. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and you mentioned how you get in there, what they're doing to us with social media. We live in a free society, so everybody can get in. Then you look about Iran. You mentioned Iran and the Legos. How do you combat that against them if they're shutting down the internet? I've read reports, and that's a little tougher trick because they don't have the same free society we do.
So part of it is who's the audience, right? So the audience for the Lego videos from Iran is not the Iranian audience. It's the international audience, and it's the U.S. national audience. So what are our allies? Are they beginning to say to us through diplomatic channels the same themes and messages that the Iranians are pushing through these videos? And so that's what we have to look at. Like, who's the intended audience, and is it having an effect on that audience? And how are the differing ways that we might be able to change that effect?
Okay. Looking forward. Now let's look forward a little bit, a few years, predict the future. Sure. What do you think will be disruptive technology or innovation or game changer in AI for military applications, especially special operations, because we're here at SOF Week?
Yeah. So I think the thing that is beginning to happen, and the thing that we're going to have to wrestle with in the near future, is autonomous decision making. And at what point are we comfortable with machines making decisions for us? And to some degree, that exists in the US military right now. There are a couple of weapon systems, the Patriot missile system, the Aegis gun system, which is on Navy ships, which can operate autonomously because it's a speed of action, right? If there's a missile coming in at a ship, you maybe allow the gun to shoot it when it detects it, as opposed to waiting for a human, because it might take too long. So within the decision-making processes that we're beginning to bring AI into, we very much want a human on the loop or in the loop. And at some point, the speed of the information and the speed that the decisions will require is going to require that we wrestle with the idea of what are we comfortable with in the idea of machines making decisions and directing action for us? And the more that tends towards the lethal space, the more important that decision is. And so I think that's something that I don't have an answer for, but I think it's something we're going to have to wrestle with more and more as artificial intelligence becomes more integrated into our formations, as it becomes more capable, as we see more value in it. Somewhere along the line, we're going to have to wrestle with autonomous decision making.
And when you say that, it also makes me think what you talked about 20 years ago, how we would get technology. You talked about this early on in the podcast. And it's we talked about 5 years from now. That could be happening much more quickly. The speed of innovation with AI is astronomical. We talk to coders who say a year ago it would take a team of people to do what I just did in 6 weeks. It would take them 9 months. So, and it just changes so fast. How do we keep up with that speed of innovation with a slow acquisition system too? So
always a challenge. But I think that in the past couple of years, I've seen a tremendous amount of growth within government customers and community of both understanding or wanting to understand innovation. There's always going to be the people who don't want innovation, right? We've always done it this way. It's been good enough for me for the past 15 years. Why change the system? Now that I've worked my way up to the top of the system, don't change it on me. But I think innovation, and particularly in the special operations community, there's always been a bias towards innovation because it drives speed and efficiency. And those are kind of the hallmarks of the community. Of all of our military operations are speed and efficiency. So innovation is going to continue to drive that. And the special operations community has always been kind of at the cutting edge adopters of innovative technology. So I think that's going to continue.
And it looks like this current administration is pushing for ways to get things done more quickly for autonomous systems and AI. And of course, special forces will be right at the front of that.
I think, for years, the industry has complained about how the acquisition community adopts innovative technology. And we've always said it's too slow and it's too bureaucratic. And there have been in the past couple of years, in the past year in particular, some great changes. And you're seeing memorandums coming out of the Department of War that are pushing organizations to adopt innovative technology and work with smaller companies and find more flexible contracting vehicles and fund, growth and innovation. So I think it's moving in a good direction.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of that. What we see, not just with the clearing the red tape, so to speak, with unmanned vehicles. We're seeing the long-term play with MOSA, modular open systems approach, open architectures, all these sorts. So hopefully that momentum continues. And speaking of momentum and fun, I like to ask this question when I talk to you at SOF Week. What are you most excited about with the upcoming event?
So SOF Week is just a special week, and a couple things really excite me about it. One is, on a personal level, it's just always a great opportunity to see old friends and old colleagues, some who are still serving, some who are out like me. In some cases, meeting the children of people I serve with who are now serving. It's just amazing personal connections, which that's one of the things that's special about the special operations community is the deep personal connections. Humans are more important than hardware. So that's always valuable. I love the opportunity to get to talk to customers and potential customers and really get a feel for what their challenges are. We always think we've got the right answer until you talk to the customer and they're like, I missed that. So I'm always excited to talk to customers and potential customers and get their point of view and see what their challenges and what their problems are and see if there's a way that we can empower and enable them to be better at their jobs.
And this might be the largest one we've had in years for SOF Week. I'm looking at the exhibitor list the other day. So there's a lot of folks there, a lot of small businesses too.
The other thing I like about this year, so this is the year that they do the live demo. There's an international SOF presence. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk to some of our international partners. There have always been a joy to work with throughout our careers. And so finding a way to help and enable them also, I think, is an exciting opportunity.
I think they often participate in the demo too, which is good to see.
Absolutely.
So that brings us right to the end of our broadcast. Thanks for speaking today, Bill. I enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot. And all the audience, be sure at the show this week to check out Accrete AI Government at booth 5115 in Tampa at the Tampa Convention Center. And thanks to all of you for listening to today's SOF Week Show Daily version of the McHale Report Podcast. I look forward to seeing you on future broadcasts. Bill, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.